Morning, folks. Welcome to Wednesday's edition of our town hall meeting. A few things today. Mrs. Claudia Reeves, who lives here in Williamsville, apartment Cambridge 101, has offered to deliver absentee ballots to the Board of Elections. So anybody that, for whatever reason, doesn't mail theirs, if they want to give their absentee ballot to Mrs. Reeves or put it under her door, she'll be happy to deliver that for you. She has actually reached out to the Board of Elections and has found out that this is acceptable. Again, Mrs. Claudia Reeves, if people want to have her deliver their absentee ballots for voting, you can reach out to her. You can slip them under her door. She's in Cambridge, here in Williamsville 101, and she has offered to facilitate part of that process. So consider this a public service announcement. I want to go over a few other things today. So just to reiterate the antigen testing process for visitors, it's been in place for a couple of weeks now. It's always a good time to kind of revisit the process on these things because it is fairly new. This is for folks that, of course, want to come in and stay overnight or stay for, go into resident apartments for a period of 48 hours at a clip. And it's been going well. I can tell you that this past weekend we had, of course, we test here in Williamsville on Thursdays and Fridays. Thursdays from 3 to 5 and Fridays from 1 to 3, and then down in Gate Circle from about 3:30 to 5:30. And we've had about 5 or 6 people being tested in those different time frames at both sites. So that's gone very well. This weekend we have a little bit more than that, 7 or 8 within those time periods, so that's going well. Just to reiterate the process. So the tests, you have to call the front desk at both sites. So here for Williamsville test is 929-5800, and for Gate Circle is 929-5600. Tests again are administered here in Williamsville from 3 to 5 on Thursdays, and 1 to 3 on Fridays, and at Gate Circle from 3:30 to 5:30 on Fridays. So you call up, you get a time, you'll be assigned a time, and we're charging $50 a test, and it's really just to cover our costs. So as I talked about, the test itself costs Canterbury Woods about $40. These are antigen tests that we purchased. The organization has purchased, we've invested about $40,000 just in purchasing these tests, and also staff time. The staff time is really a key here because it is a staff-intensive process. We have to have a trained nurse doing it. Not only does it take 15 or so minutes per test, but there's a lot of technical stuff involved, obviously, with learning how to do the test. And also there's reporting requirements as well, which take time on the back end. So it's not just as simple as it may seem. You get a quick swab test and you're done. There's setup time, and actually there's reporting time to the Department of Health. So it's a pretty complicated process. Maximum of 2 visitors per apartment or patio home. And then once somebody tests negative, they will be able to visit for 48 consecutive hours from that point. And that's really, that time period was, again, because we've had some questions on this, was designated in conjunction with our medical director, Dr. John Botkin, because the test just tells us that you aren't active for the virus or shedding the virus at the time that you get the test. It doesn't take into consideration that you may have been exposed to the virus an hour before, a day before, and it hasn't yet reached a point in your system that it's detectable to this test. Now keep in mind also, these tests are 85% accurate. They're not 100%. But they're as close as we're able to purchase on the marketplace, and they're similar to what's being offered out there in the greater community for antigen testing. We, as a matter of fact, are one of the few long-term care institutions, senior services institutions in the state that are using these tests at this point, because we've elected to go out and buy them ourselves. So once somebody is tested negative, they will register as a guest, they will get a name tag again. That name tag is something that they need to keep for the entire 48 hours because it will designate them as been tested, and it will in fact really serve as their key to allow them to come in and out of the community for that time period. They would show it to the security person as appropriate, or the front desk person as appropriate here at Gates, or here at Williamsville and down at Gates Circle. They'll only be allowed to visit in the designated, they'll only be allowed as a visitor to visit in their loved one's apartment. They're not allowed to go in anybody else's apartment and not allowed to gather in the common areas. So again, it's going well. A couple of questions are, do we have plans to expand the amount of days that we're testing? And I'd like to say that that's going to happen soon, but I just don't know. We're able to accommodate fairly easily the amount of requests for tests right now on Thursdays and Fridays at both sites. I know that people would like to be able to be tested on other days, but again, it's a very staff-intensive process. And I appreciate people being flexible with their schedules and understanding that we're doing our best here initially. We have, for people that, for loved ones that want to stay beyond the 48 hours and they're coming from, they're coming from states that aren't on the New York State naughty list, with which that list is shrinking. I think there's 40 quarantine states right now as of yesterday. So many states that when we update the kiosks, the AccuShield system, when people sign in, you can't even barely read them all on that one screen because there's so many states there. But if resident family members are coming from out of state, from states that don't have to quarantine, we are making special accommodations for them to test after they come in on Thursday or Friday to test on Mondays and Wednesdays, so on, because they're staying for a longer period of time. So if you have questions about that, we're trying to work with people. Again, it's not an easy undertaking to test people for this, but we're trying to work with people on, for special considerations. We're not testing people if your loved ones say, well, I can only come on a Tuesday, can we test me then? We're not doing that. They initially have to come and be tested initially on a Thursday or Friday, and then after that, if they're lengthening their stay, then we will make special considerations for that. So, call these numbers, talk to the folks at the front desk, and they will work with you on as much as we can to get people tested. The other thing is, and several questions have come up about this. And I think I just said this, if your loved ones that want to come and visit you are from one of the states that are on the New York State quarantine list, we have no control over this. They still have to quarantine. So if they're coming from, let's say, the Carolinas or Florida, and they want to get tested, they can't usurp the New York State process, which is they still have to quarantine for 14 days, and then we will test them. We don't have control over that, and we're certainly not going to go against what New York State is mandating relative to that testing. So there's nothing that we can do. If you have a loved one coming from one of those states to come and see you, they have to quarantine first before we can even test them. And of course, if somebody tests positive, they have to immediately leave the community, and we would recommend that they go get a test from their physician or from another source, just to follow up on any positive tests that they get here. One other quick thing. So again, we're watching the data, and we're hoping and praying that We don't get any positive tests here, or residents don't come positive on the independent side. All the predictors are is that even in Western New York, the amount of cases are going to go up. That being said, one of the things I continue to notice, and I've talked about it, is, and this is especially here in Williamsville, is groups of residents gathering together in common areas, eating, drinking, pulling their masks down, talking to each other with their masks down, grouped together. Folks, that's a no-no, and we've been talking about it for a while. Even if you grab a cup of coffee and you go to sit in the lounge, please don't drink your coffee in the lounge. You have to go back to your apartment. If you're eating, it has to be done in your apartment if it's not during a dining time. The reality is, again, it does happen more on evenings and weekends when administration, probably particularly me, are not here. Residents just decide that they're not going to wear masks as much. So, I urge you, peer pressure is a wonderful thing, so I urge peer pressure. I urge residents to be much more conscious of this, wearing and keeping your masks on in common areas. I mean, honestly, what it's forcing me to consider, and it's especially here in Williamsville, is not having as much furniture in the common areas again as we go into the winter and we go into the season where cases are predicted to go up. I mean, I'm just being honest that that decision point is back on the table for us in terms of removing most of the furniture in our common areas, which we put it back, and people did well for a while, and then we're backsliding again. So I encourage people to be more conscious of that. The other thing which I chuckle about is, I guess there's a rumor out there that you can't gather in each other's apartments. And I said this from the beginning. I don't think it's good practice. I can tell you that I don't have people in my own home in masks, I just don't. But there's nothing I can do about it if you decide that you're going to have fellow residents in your apartments. Again, what you do in your apartment, it's your apartment. I can't legislate that. I'm not going to. How would I do that? I don't think it's good practice, and certainly going into the indoor season and, kind of a semi-hunker down mode as we continue to move forward here, probably should second guess it if it's something that you're doing, but I can't tell you not to. So with that, I will say thanks, and I'll be back here on Monday. Thank you.